Okay, so back in Habakkuk, it's the 35th book of the Bible. There are 56 verses, 1,476 words. I hope you're memorising all this. 20 promises, 12 questions for God, and one big foundational command stroke promise. One big foundation, okay? And you're right now, you're sitting there going, just forget those other numbers, tell us the one big thing. Okay. Faith in the God of the Bible, the true and living God of the Bible, His sustaining grace, His mercy, and the fact that He is in control. Faith in Him. That's the big command. Faith and dependence in Him. And so we're straight up and straight into it, because you and I will build ourselves a foundation on something. What this book will tell us, and has been telling us, is if you build a foundation for your life on anything else other than Him, you are on shaky ground. And perhaps you haven't realised that because you've been in boom time. You see, in boom time, you can build yourself your foundation on plenty of things, or at least that's what the media and our culture and our mates and our parents will tell us. There's all kinds of things that you can establish life on. So when the good times and family's working, you can build it on family. On good times, when parties are working for you, you can build it on party. On good times, and you can go on and on and on and on, whether it's a job and our career, whether it's the news that we hear, anything. You can build, but it's when difficult times come that the proof will be in the pudding of whether what you've built your life on is big enough to be able to carry your weight. The test of a foundation is, can it hold my weight when stuff is all messed up? Can it help me make sense? What I'm putting my faith in, what I'm building my confidence on, when somebody who I love walks out on me, when somebody who I love dies, when my whole financial security gets stripped away, when my health is falling apart, when there's chaos in the streets, when my kids aren't behaving, when it's just bad news day after day, when I've just got a heart that sinks. Well, I used to be a glass half full, and now I just can't help myself. Every time I get up in the morning, I'm just a glass half empty. It doesn't take anything to kick me off, and I'm in floods of tears. It's at that point that you can test whether what you've built your foundation on can carry it. And the message of Habakkuk is quite simple. The only thing that is the foundation that you can build your life on, that will work in boom times and in hard times, is the foundation of faith on and in the God of the Bible, the true and living God, His sustaining grace and saving power. And you've got to feel for Habakkuk, this prophet, this guy who in some ways loved God, knew something about who he was, but really struggled to make sense of the world he was facing at the time. He's living in a time when the whole nation is crumbling and falling apart. It is dark, and to him, we heard last week, didn't we? It seems unending. And he's just got this ache. He's living in seeming deep water, treading water, and he feels like he's going glug, glug, glug under. He's going down. And we read that, didn't we, in the first little bit of Habakkuk last week. How long, O Lord, verse 2, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out to you violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look on injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Everything's hitting the fan, he's saying. Therefore the law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that the justice is perverted. And he's just gutted. He's living at a time where basically everybody's saying, listen to God. Why? I know. I've got power. I've got potential. I can make my own choices. Who needs God? He's way off beyond the Andromeda Galaxy anyway. Who cares about him? I've moved on. I went to school. I've learned a bit of stuff. I've watched National Geographic. I've watched the Discovery Channel. I know stuff. I can make my life work all on my own. I've read Deep Magazine. That tells me all I need to know to get through the relationships in life. I've done it. And that's where he's living. And he's living in that kind of world, which is frighteningly similar to the world that we're living in. And God has two choices. God can step in immediately and stop it all. Or he can take the brakes off and say, okay, you think you can run your life on it? Now, I wonder which one of those two scares you the most. Because I think they're both pretty scary prospects. But can you imagine just where we can run with life if the Lord just takes the brakes off and just lets people run? Excuse me, and Habakkuk is living that. Last week, He was like, please, can you fix this? They're running riots. It's madness down here. Just make it stop. I've got a few suggestions for you, Lord. I've been pointing out some stuff to you. I've been praying for weeks, months, years even. Why aren't you doing nothing? Why aren't you stepping in? Is it because you're idle? And the Lord steps up and remember his answer from last week in verse 5? Oh no. Listen, boyo, I know you've been praying. I haven't been ignoring it. And I am doing stuff. But here's the catch. You're not going to like it. No. Because I'm bigger than you, because I know more than you, because I'm from eternity, because I am God, I know more than you, and the things that I'm going to bring to you, it's not going to make you sit comfortably. In fact, it's going to make you squirm on your chair. I am bringing against you and your nation who've walked out on me and say, I can live without God, I'm bringing upon them the Babylonian nation. And we sit here and go, ooh, sounds exciting. No, that would have struck terror. The prospect of it would have struck terror into anybody. Lord, you're not doing anything. Answer, yes I am, and you're not going to like it. And this sets us up for the central issue for today. Okay? So I've got it written at the top. I was trying to make it pithy. Do you like the very pithy sentence I've got written at the top? So short and easy, isn't it? No, hopefully you'll get it, okay? And I'm going to say it a couple of times so you get it. This is the big theme for today. How to go on when you can't make sense of what God is doing. Yeah? How to go on when you can't make sense of what God is doing. Okay, and sometimes, some answer, sometimes we flick it the other way around. Yeah, I'll come to that in just a minute. But the answer that we're going to come to is, have faith in Him. Not blindly, not empty, not words up from inside, but know enough about Him that you can trust the God you do know for the things that you don't. Okay? How do you keep going when you can't make sense of what God is doing? Answer, trust the God you do know for the things that you don't. Do you get that? And that's what we're basically going to unpack and see. So there's the big thing there. How to go on when you can't make sense of what God is doing. Right? So we got that. Yeah? Good. Now we're going to see 5 things. The first one is probably longer than 3 or 4 of them put together. So point number 1 is quite long. Point 2, 3 and 4 relatively short. Point 5 somewhere in between. Okay? So if I'm after 10 minutes I'm still on point 1 and you think flipping heck you've got 5 to go, cool your jets. It'll all be okay. Alright? Okay, so point 1. How to keep going when you don't know and can't make sense of what God is doing. Number 1, don't expect to know as much as God. But of course we do. So here we are. Now you've got to realise that Habakkuk, the whole book is like problem-based learning. Sometimes what we wish is that God would just tell us something. Think, there you go. But what he does is the issues of life, he wraps up or a big truth about who he is and what the world is like and what life is about, how he acts, is wrapped up in an individual. Okay, so in schools nowadays, we're not just supposed to, if you're a maths teacher, you're not supposed to teach them that 3 add 4 equals 7. What you're supposed to do is wrap it up in a big question like, a shopkeeper had made £4 off that person and made £3 off that person. How much has the shopkeeper made altogether? £7. Yeah, you get it? So one's a mere bones fact, the other is wrapped up in a life situation. The book of Habakkuk is teaching us massive things about the type of the nature of the world, the type of God that God is, who we are, what we're like, how we respond to it. But it's wrapped up in this drama of this poor guy's struggle, so that we can see that whenever God is dealing with somebody, it's in the midst of real life. And so what's particularly in focus in this section is how we, as in a life of faith, are supposed to respond. The big answers to the big truths, we'll touch on them today, but they're going to come in the next few weeks. At the moment, what's in the focus here is how you just get through it. So, number 1, don't expect to know, hold on, let me click this. Don't expect to know as much as God. And again, we've got a feel for Habakkuk. You can imagine it, can't you? When he gets the news that God is sending the Babylonian war machine over the hill, he's like, Lord, if I'd known you were going to do that, I'd never have prayed. I'd never have said do something. I wanted revival, and you send the Nazis. What on earth are you doing? You call that an answer? He's not happy, is he? I mean, I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, a Liverpool fan can understand this one a little bit. It's like a Liverpool fan sort of like, Lord, please, knock Man United off the top of the table. The Lord goes, fine. Who's at the top now? Man City. Oh, come on. I was trying to think of another example. I was trying to think what it would actually feel like. It's like Bethany comes downstairs one day and she said, I've had enough, Dad. I can't take it anymore. My sisters, they're gouging each other's eyes out. They're taking each other's dollies and ripping them to shreds. They're hanging out the window and pulling moonies and effing and blinding and everybody out the window. Dad, if you're the dad, you should jump in and do something. And I said, Bethany, chill. I've got it all in hand. Earlier this morning, I took a big lump of C4 high explosive. I put it under their bed. The timer's set. Just wait. 10 minutes later, boom. And poor Habakkuk's like, what? Overkill? Oh, a revival? Not this. And he's angry. I mean, you can see the two complaints that are there, can't you see? Verse 12, can you see it there? Oh Lord, are you not from everlasting, my God, my Holy One? We will not die. Oh, come on, Lord, you message. We're your people. You can't kill us. Oh, yeah? Oh, Lord, you've appointed them to judge the Babylonians? Oh, Rock, you've ordained them to punish? Your eyes are too pure to look on evil. You can't tolerate wrong. Why then do you tolerate the treacherous? Why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than you? That doesn't seem, your plan to fix this, Lord, it doesn't seem holy. You know you're supposed to be holy? You're supposed to always be righteous. It doesn't look like that to me. You're going to use them. And Habakkuk knew enough of his Bible to know that the Lord would bring judgments and disciplines and reproof and chastening on his people from time to time. I think what Habakkuk struggled with was just the fact it was going to be by the hand of scumbags. That ain't right, is it? Won't that dishonour you? I mean, you're holy and you're using grubby tools to do it with. Isn't that dishonouring you? I think the answer would come back from the Lord. He'd say something along these lines. Well, have you got any idea how much you're dishonouring me? No, it's better for me to act and say, look, if they're my people, I will act to do something. Do you realise that sometimes the Lord does that? He loves to lavish his grace on his people. But sometimes when his people are making a mockery, when the world around look at his people and go, what are they doing? They're disgusting. The point has come where the Lord's going to step in and deal with his people. Oh, please, Lord, be merciful to us. Whenever people look at us here at Sweet Baptist Church and say, have you seen the way they go at each other? Have you seen the things they say about each other? Have you seen how greedy and jealous and nasty they are? The backbone. If you've got people who aren't believers, and look, I'll tell you, the Lord's going to deal with us, isn't he? He will. But then there's the second complaint that Habakkuk's got, and this comes in verses 14 through to 17 here. You've made men like fish in the sea, like sea creatures that have no ruler. The wicked foe pulls all of them up with hooks. He catches them in his net. He gathers them in his dragnet. And so he rejoices and he's glad. And therefore he sacrifices to his net and burns incense to his dragnet. For by this net he lives in luxury and enjoys the choicest foods. Is he to keep on emptying his net, destroying nations without mercy? He says, look, you've chucked a load of people out here, and it looks for a while as if the godless, the people who've got no time for you, the people who are cruel and oppressive, wins. Why is it that so often the good people get the double deal, and those who have got no time for you seem to go on for a while prospering? You know, they're having a ball, aren't they, them Babylonians? They hate righteousness, they hate you, they don't even admit that it's you who sent them. They're having a great time, they're having a ball, they're up there in Management Monthly, there's big plaques and big buildings celebrating their glory, they're being honoured, their businesses are working, they're getting rich, they're having a great time, parties, balls, the whole caboodle. It's like they're living the Vegas lifestyle, and they hate you even more than we do. Why is it that people who've got no time for you seem for a while at least to be living it so large? Lord, I'm sorry, I can't stomach that, Lord. They're all over there yelling, who needs God anyway? And it seems to be working for them. That came up for those of us fellas who were there last week, where the fellas got together. We asked them that question. You know, I started off last week by saying that life now was never supposed to be bearable unless you've got the Lord at the centre of your life. Which actually makes wonderful biblical sense, doesn't it? Because if we were made by him to know him and have been a relationship if that breaks, everything breaks around, doesn't it? So life was never meant to be bearable unless the Lord is right at the centre. And we're stupid if we think life will be bearable without him at the centre. And yet the thing that as fellas we were noticing is that some people seem to be having a ball. It seems that it's working for them, at least for a little while. There are people getting rich, there are people on telly, there are people who've got celebrity status. And I wonder whether there's something going on in Habakkuk that he's looking over there at them vicious Babylonians and almost going, I could probably be better to be one of them than one of your people, Lord. I wonder how sometimes we feel when we look and we see the shiny, happy people in TV land, or on the front cover of the magazine, or marching off to a party down in town, and we go, oh, wish I wasn't a Christian, I could go and join them. They've got it better than us. I resent you, Lord, because they seem to be having it great. And in that moment we become fools, don't we? We can feel the draw. Habakkuk does. All this doesn't seem right. I can't make sense of it. And I've said, hold on, at this point, there's no expect to know as much as God. But the bottom line is, it's not that he thinks he does know. It's a case of he knows bits about what God is like, and he's cobbled it all together, and the fact is, I can't reconcile, Lord, the fact that you're holy, and wicked people are supposed to get battered, and we're suffering, and you're using them, and that seems to work. I can't hold it all together. It doesn't make sense. I can't see a way through. And we're supposed to say, Amen. But the problem is for you and I is we live in a culture and a time when everybody thinks they know. We have loose women. Loose women on telly. They can make sense out of anything, can't they? We have big papers with lots of really complicated words. We've been to school, we've seen the Discovery Channel, and suddenly we think, we know. We know which sort of laws to follow. So we're sort of like, there's laws of the land, and, we pick and choose them. Or we drive to the Morrisons, and there's baby spaces, there's disabled spaces, and there's normal spaces. But when we drive up, we know which one we should go in. We will go into the one whichever is closest to the door. And if that happens to be the disabled and the baby space, who cares? I'm special. I know. We live in this mood and this age where we just think we can make sense of everything, but we just can't. We just can't do it. We know nothing. I'm just going to give you 4 little images just to remind you that we're not God and we don't know everything. First one's this. Have you got a clue what's going on next door? For all you know, they could have let off a load of wasps out there. They're all sort of they could be having a seance. You don't know what's going on in your house right now. I know what you hope's going on and what normally is going on, but how do you know? You don't know. What's going on in all the different people's houses and speak? Who's having a row? Probably. Yeah? Linda, how can you even sit here? That's terrible. They're killing each other out there. And you're not the wiser. What happens when your kids... Oh, here we go. Yeah. What happens when your kids go to school? You think they're walking to school. They're running from the Morrisons. You don't know any... What's going on in Budapest? What's going on in Shanghai? How are the choices that all those guys over there are making, and how they're rubbing their hands together and making a massive war machine in China going to affect us? You haven't got a clue. You know nothing. You don't even know what's going on in your house right now. But I know. I can question God, don't you know? It's the other thing. We're a little bit like Poppy. There I was at 7 o'clock this morning. Poppy had kept him up all night, and finally, ask your child. So I said, okay. I'm sitting there, I'm reading through my notes and deciding what I'm going to talk about today, and I'm praying, and here's little Poppy. And she's just there. And then you know what's coming next. And she doesn't know what's happened. But in a minute you know what's coming next, don't you? What's going to happen next? Cry. She's going to cry, isn't she? She doesn't know why she's going to cry. All she knows is that things have changed a little bit. She can't explain the fact that her nappy's soiled. I could sit there until I'm blue in the face. Okay? I'll sit there and I'd like to explain to you about the whole process of the digestive tract. Okay, so what happens is you take in that lovely milk that you're so happy to, it works, doesn't it? And sooner or later, the magic happens, voodoo, out it comes. And all she'll do is look up at me in the same way and go, because she just hasn't got it, she doesn't know. Now there's 35 years separating me and Poppy, alright? And I'm just about enough to know a little bit about the digestive tract and how it works. I can speak to her, I get it, speak to her, explain it, and all she'll ever do is go, She doesn't know. Can I tell you, the gap between you and me and the smartest person who has ever lived, Albert Einstein if you like, the gap between him and the Lord is a lot more than 35 years. But we think we know. We're like Poppy. She's like, it's interesting, she's utterly helpless. If you just left it, all she would do is just wave her arms around and squeal in a pot of her own squalor. And compared with the Lord, that's us that we think we know. Here's little Emily. Little Emily, bless her, she's 4. I found it a good policy not to go to little Emily, who's 4, and ask her for advice. Okay? Because there's only ever going to be one bit of answer that comes out of it. Sweets. Okay? So me and your mother were having a few troubles in our marriage. Any thoughts? Like some sweets. She meets David Cameron, the Prime Minister, and he's like, Emily, okay, I've got this real dilemma. The fiscal policy of the UK is leading to a boom-bust economy. Have you got any kind of suggestions as to how we might better move forward? Is there a sweetie shop around here? Because all she can see is in her little word, you don't ask a 4-year-old advice, and yet here's Habakkuk going, Lord, you're from everlasting to everlasting. Here's my list. One. I said there were 4 things, I can't even remember the other one. Oh yeah, time, that's it, time. This is a great one, isn't it? It says he's from everlasting to everlasting. Of course, we think we know. We can plan our past. Well, we look at our past, we say, I've learned from that. We move on to our future. Well, we've got a great way to move ahead in our future. And we like, don't we? We like films about time travel. Now, can I point out that we've never actually managed time travel? Okay? But the idea of time travel is very simple. It's you're in this moment, in this day, and you move forward to that day. Yeah? And then you're very smart. Wow, we'll learn lots of things and we'll be very... The Lord's not from that day to that day. He's from everlasting to everlasting, which means he is both in that day and in that day at the same time. Now you try and convey that in a Hollywood movie. You can't even convey that in a Hollywood movie. Try and think of it now. How on earth could I picture God being in that day and that day? You can't even conceive of it, can you? But the Lord says, I'm there, and I'm there, and I'm there. Every day is my today. I'm everywhere. So listen, Habakkuk, when you're screaming at me, please, with your limited vision, don't expect to know what I know. Don't presume to sit on me as judge. But that's what we do, isn't it? What we do is we say, Lord, this is all hit the fan. I'm sitting in the throne, my own soil, happy here. Wow, give me sweets. And the Lord looks down and he says, easy, tiger. You're not me. I know this makes sense. In fact, sometimes we go to the Lord and say, look, I know you should have done this and you haven't. You should repent to me. That's stupid, isn't it? The idea that we can make sense of what God is doing just doesn't make sense. That's stupid. Because he's God and we're not. We're Poppy and even smaller. And he's the vast Lord of the universe. So, how do you keep on going? What we said at the title. How do you go on when you don't make sense, can't make sense of what God is doing? Answer number 1. Don't expect to know as much as God. Now, that was the long one. Most of the rest will probably be even short. All of them put together is probably about the same length as that one. Right. Okay, good. Second of all, don't expect no answer. So look at chapter 2, verse 1. Look at chapter 2, verse 1. So Habakkuk at the end here, he goes out and he stands and he says, I will stand at my watchtower and station myself on the ramparts. Okay, you've got a picture of a big city with a tower overlooking so they can spot when the enemies are coming, they can spot when the weather is coming. And here it's saying, I want to spot when God is coming and I want to make sense of what's going on. So it says, I will stand on my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint. Okay? Now the thing that you need to know is this is the last thing we hear of Habakkuk in this chapter until chapter 3. So let me remind you, I told you this last week, the structure of the book. Chapter 1, Habakkuk. I don't trust you, Lord. The Lord, trust me, I'm doing something, I'm doing this. Now you've said that, Lord, I really don't trust you. Chapter 2, I'm now going to tell you what I'm going to do. Trust me. Chapter 3, I trust you, Lord! Wow! But this is the last time Habakkuk speaks between now, he gets more news about who God is and what he's like, and then just a big song of praise in chapter 3. Do you get that? So, this is important. He goes to God and expects in some way something of an answer, but doesn't get the answer he expects. He expects to get enough from the Lord to face whatever he's got to face. That is what faith looks like. It says, I will not come to you and demand you give me my answers, Lord. I will come to you, trusting that you are good, trusting that you are gracious, and I will delight in the answer. And in fact, I'm going to expect that the answers you give me are bigger and better than what my puny little mind can come up with. Now, you can only go to God and pray that prayer if he's a certain kind of God. It'll only happen if we have a certain type of God. If we have a God who expects us to obey, get it right, figure it out, be obedient, be faithful, and then he'll show us grace, then we're going to get nothing, are we? But if we have a God who says, I will give you grace and mercy, I'll be patient with you, you don't have to understand all of it, I will come near to you and I will walk through, I will take you on a journey, so that you obey me and have faith. Then we've got a hope. One is a God of works who says, you measure up, you'll get grace. Which really is no grace at all. But the God of the Bible is the God who says, I know you're stuffed. And I know you can't work it out on your own. I know you're not going to obey. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to graciously, gently show you grace. And my assumption is at the end of that, you will obey. And have faith in me. Do you see that? So, point number 2, when you're trying to make sense of stuff and you're trying to work through it when nothing seems to make sense, you've got to realise that God does want to bring you answers. And that's why Habakkuk, when he stood up in the cold on that wall and said, you know what, Lord, I know you're good. Bring him. And I'll bow. Number 3, don't expect to figure it out on your own. Okay, chapter 2, verse 2. So this is the start of the Lord's reply to Habakkuk's second complaint there. Then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. Okay? Now in the world, the big globe and everything in it, the Lord has his fingerprints and his DNA marked into everything. So the way that the seasons work, the way that the sky, the water system works, the way that we've got it written something into us about having a conscience and right and wrong, it's everywhere, it's all on show. So everything, there's plenty of information in the world about who God is, about what life is about. It's just there for you to see. You can't fall out of bed in the morning without bumping into something of who God is and what he's like. And that's why we have stuff like physics. Blame the Lord. His fault. Physics is basically a load of very clever people with too much time on their hands who just make a stack of observations about how the world that God has made works and started writing it down in textbooks. And so when they started doing that hundreds of years ago, they started to build up and they put together laws and equations that describe things. To the point now, we've got a whole load of scientists working in a big sort of 22-mile tunnel under the ground in Switzerland in that Hadron Collider thing. And they've got a whole stack of things that they've observed about the world. They're checking whether it's right, and they're trying to add to their knowledge. But the very best they can do is just, all they're doing is they're just making observations about what they see and trying to play dot to dot, put it together and help it make sense. Understand? That's the same in psychiatry as well. People make observations about how these freaky things called human beings interact with one another. They notice that when you do this to them, that to them, that to them, it tends to give that kind of response. And so what the psychiatrists will do is they'll observe and they'll map different behaviours, and then what they'll do is they'll call it a condition or a syndrome or whatever it may be, and say, look, this is if you do this kind of thing to a person, this quite often happens. But all we're doing in that situation is what the scientist is doing, is playing dot to dot, filling in the gaps with the raw material of evidence that is within the universe. That's what the theologians call general revelation. It's just out there. You can see it. But here in these verses, God is talking about something else. Let me read it again. Write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets, so that herald may run with it. We're being told that there is something more for us to know if we're to make sense of life, particularly at difficult times, than merely what we see in the world. The Lord is talking about not a general revelation, but a special revelation coming from the outside. Something beyond the cosmos is going to be brought in to make sense, to tell us how everything else fits together. You get that? That is what the Bible is. The Bible is God revealing stuff to us that isn't around. So when you're trying to make sense of the junk in your life, or the stuff that you're facing, or the news you see on the telly, you've got two choices. Go and listen to people who just look at the evidence from inside the world, try and add it up, and you'll probably get some sense. But it'll be speculation, because if you really want to be able to know what's going on in the world, how to make sense, who you are, why you react the way you do, where you can find forgiveness, where you can get a new start, where real joy is found, if you want to find that, you need it to come from Him who is speaking from outside. He's saying, listen, you need my interpretations to make sense of this. Don't try and figure it out on your own. And I love this. I mean, this is what we do every week, isn't it? Every week we open the Bible. And every week what we do is we come here so that the stuff that we soak up during the week, we can make sense of under God's Word. And look what He says. I love it. The Lord, this is in the Lord's own words. Write down the revelation. Why does He say write it down? Because you don't and you forget. And you need to keep pumping it into your thick skulls. And it's too precious. Look. And make it plain on tablets. At the very least, if God's Word is being opened, pick up a darn pencil. You idiots. You're going to forget it. Listen to it again on the internet. I know Steve's voice is boring, but the topic he's talking about is straight out of the Bible, so listen to it. Pick up your Bible before breakfast time and have a read. It's too precious. I mean, he's talking about tablets here. This is how important it is that God speaks from outside. You can't figure it out on your own. You're an idiot if you try to carry on living as if you can. You need His Word right at the centre. Put it on tablets. Plaster it down. Chisel it in. Because this is more precious than gold. Everybody's asking the why question about everything. And here's the Lord saying, here it is. It tells you as well that the only people you should have standing in this pulpit are people who explain God's Word. I've said this to you loads of times. You don't need my ideas about life. The only people you want to listen to are the people who are saying, I'm taking what's in the world around me and I'm listening to God and letting Him make sense of it. You go and listen to Oprah for too long, you're just going to have your brain go mushy. What does she know? She's lovely and all that, but she's an idiot like the rest of us. Listen, don't think you can figure it out on your own. When you're trying to make sense, when you are up there, how to go on when you can't make some sense of what God is doing, answer, don't think you can figure it out on your own. Get it from His Word. Get people around you who know His Word, who can bring gospel and Bible light to what is going on. Next one. Number 4, here we go. Hold on, here we go. Right. Don't expect your timetable. I love this one. Okay? Don't expect your timetable. You can see it there in verse 3. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It certainly will come and will not delay. I'll go through that again, okay? 5 times, basically it's told, if you're trying to make sense of stuff, don't expect a quick answer, you might have to wait. Okay, so look at it 5 times there. Look, for the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end, i.e. not now, it's coming. Yeah? It will not prove false, in other words, it's going to happen. And though it linger, wait for it, it will certainly come and not delay. Poor Habakkuk, he thought, I've been waiting long enough. I've been waiting long enough on this answer. I've been praying, I've been waiting. And the Lord says, there's a perfect time for me to work this all out in just the right way so that everything works together, so that people are left saying, wow, you're amazing, Lord, and so that you are left rejoicing and full of joy. And it won't be necessarily according to your timetable. Remember, sometimes He's slow so that more people can get mercy and grace. It will happen. I am working, but just be patient. And what's the obstacle to that for us? Well, the obstacle is often in hard times our soul is aching and we just want the ache to stop, don't we? And quite often it's because we don't trust the Lord, that we assume He's not going to fulfill His promises, that we don't want to. And so rather than sort of risking waiting for His promises, what do? We take it into our own hands. I've got written down 3 ways in which you may have taken it into your own hands and ways in which I might take it into my own hands. Here they are. Number 1, when I can't make sense of what's happening and I don't want to wait for the Lord, what I'll do is I'll run, leg it. I'm out of here, Lord. I'm out. I'm going. I'm gone. I'm just disappearing. And the problem with that is when you do that, you just miss the grace that's there to sustain you. Remember when we heard from the Apostle Paul? You know, 3 times I prayed, Lord, take that thorn in the flesh away. And the Lord says, hold on, my grace will uphold you and give you so much more, leaving Paul at the point where he was like, wow, having a weakness isn't that bad, because the Lord's awesome. I taste more of His grace and power. And if you just leg it away from the Lord, you miss that one. What about second of all? Right, okay, I'm struggling. I'm not going to run. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack. I'm going to get my hands dirty, I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to sort it out, I'm going to force the issue. Which, roughly translated, I'll play God. I'll sort this one out, I know, and if anybody gets in my way, woe betide them. But thirdly, some people just sit there in a big puddle of despair. I think Habakkuk was reasonably close to this one. Poor me, he doesn't care, because he's not doing it exactly the way I want him to do it. Poor me, he won't give me my sweets. Poor me. And the problem when that happens is that what you do is you end up turning inwards. And if the one place where we can get hope is by looking upwards and seeing His faithfulness, when you're in the self-pity party, what happens is everything's all about you and your feelings start making interpretations. Please, if you're facing hard times, I don't want to minimise them, because sometimes if you haven't, you will do. This coming year, there are people who, you lot sitting listening to my voice, some of you will go through some really hard times. I don't want to minimise that. But despair and turning inwards is not going to help. You turn your eyes upwards and you say, do you know what, I can't make sense of this, but I know the God who can. So don't expect your timetable. Poor Habakkuk. In fact, poor Habakkuk gets the answer, Lord, it's killing me here, I can't take it anymore. He says, sorry, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And the message of the Bible is that quite often things will get worse before they get better, but the Lord will sustain you through it. Fifthly and finally, how are we doing on time? Right, I've got to be very quick here. We're going to spend the whole of next week just looking at verse 4, but I just need to touch on verse 4 and 5 just to help you make sense just of this section. Because verse 4 is, some people have described it as the nutshell of the whole Bible. The whole Old Testament. But we'll see that next week. We're just going to look at verse 4 next week, but I'm going to touch on verse 4 and 5 now. See, he is puffed up, his desires are not upright, but the righteous will live by their faith. Indeed, wine betrays him. He is arrogant and never at rest, because he is greedy as the grave, and like death is never satisfied. He gathers to himself all the nations and takes all peoples captive. So here what we've got is 2 pictures of 2 people as they face the difficulties and the mess that is life here, as they're trying to make sense of it and the world that they're in. Person number 1 is described at the start of verse 4. Person number 1 is, verse 4, see, he is puffed up, his desires are not upright. In other words, he is arrogant. He's living a way that just brings emptiness. And I suppose for Habakkuk, he's given us a little light on the Babylonians. Remember, you were saying a minute ago, Babylonians, everything seems to be going right for them, even though they've got no time for the Lord. And the Lord comes back and says, whatever you do, Habakkuk, don't resent them, don't be envious of them. Because to be honest with you, even in this life, though it looks like they're living a shiny life, they're not. Look at them. They're drunk. Can I tell you now, the Bible has nothing good to say about alcohol? You can see what it does to people there in verse 5. Indeed, wine betrays him. He is arrogant and never at rest. They say, oh, brilliant, this is great. I'm going to have a beer to celebrate all my successes. And sooner or later, it destroys them. Wine is a traitor. You know what a traitor does? It persuades you that it is your friend and then stabs you in the back. Addiction does that to you. Please. The Bible has nothing good to say about alcohol. It won't make you happy. It will just kill you. Look at them, the arrogant. You can see there in verse 4, they're puffed up, arrogant. His soul is not right. So here's this guy, looks like everything's going great for him, but his reputation and his toys are consuming him. I've got to have more stuff. People look at him and say, "Oh, he's never had it so good." And then you say, "Hold on, are you sure?" He's got stomach ulcers. His marriage is breaking down. It's pitiful. Yeah, he may have his 2 or 3 holidays in the Maldives, but I tell you, that's all he's got, because his soul is empty. He is perishing. What about his money? Well, he's full of greed. And the greed, it cripples him and turns him into an inward person. And I suppose what we're saying here, the Lord is saying, actually, within the scope of life now, if you are proud and arrogant, trying to live without God, even if it looks like it's working for you, it's not. It's broken and it is breaking down. So please, let us not be those kind of people who looks at other people who seem to have it all working for them, but they don't know the Lord and say they've got a better lot than me. Who on earth do we think we are? We're the sons and heirs of the King. Yeah, we're in a difficult time at the moment. We've got eternity. We've got His blessing. We've got His grace. We've got His promise of His faithfulness. Who'd swap that for a size 8 dress size? You'd be an idiot if you do. Who'd swap that for a big fat wallet? You'd be an idiot if you do. We've got so much. And so the start of the Lord's answer is, listen, even the proud person who looks like it's going great for them, it's beginning to fall down. But then there's the second person here. There's the second person who's found in the second part of verse 4. Can you see it? But the righteous will live by his faith. But the righteous will live by his faith. There's a kind of person here, and it says righteous. What it doesn't mean is that they are right in themselves. It means that they're the people who turn to the Lord and they depend on the Lord. He is their confidence. It's not their own right actions. It's that if I put my trust and faith in Him, even when I can't make sense of it, I've got the hope. They're humble because they know they don't know as much as God. They're humble because they know that God is the kind of God who answers even people like them. They're humble because they know they can't figure out, but they know that God has got it all under control. They're humble because they say, I know I haven't got my timetable, but I'll leave it with you, Lord. They know that the God of the Bible is good, just, righteous, and faithful. And they know that He won't let them down. And I realise that for some of us, sometimes that's a real hard battle. Sometimes we look at our lives and we look at the world around us and we say, how could you possibly bring any good out of that? How can you bring rescue and salvation out of this profound depth of injustice and misery and mistakes that I've made? How can you possibly do that, Lord? And then suddenly you stop yourself because you realise that that's exactly what they were saying at the foot of the cross as they looked up and saw a man dying there 2,000 years ago. They looked and they said, hold on, he was perfect and righteous and never did anything wrong, and yet all the forces of evil have been unleashed against him, and they're killing him up there, Lord. They're killing him. How can this injustice ever be part of your purpose? How could this ever work out for anybody's good? And what they didn't see as they stood there looking up there was that as Jesus died on the cross, God Himself, the victim of total injustice, through that was bringing salvation to all who would turn to Him. Bringing the forgiveness of sins and a righteousness not of their own for anybody who would trust in Him. How do I make sense? How do I go on in life when I can't make sense of what God is doing? Well, I know this. You look at the cross and you say, He did it then, He can do it again. I trust You, Lord. I trust You for the days of this life and for eternity. Before we sing of God's faithfulness, let's bow our heads.